Hey everybody, Goody and Johnny Moore back doing another movie review. This time we are going to be doing X-Men Dark Phoenix.
Dark Phoenix?
Well, actually, I'm sorry, it's only Dark Phoenix. They never promoted it as X-Men Dark Phoenix.
Just Dark Phoenix.
Which they probably should have.
This is episode 17 for those of you that are counting.
And thank you very much to all the loyal fans that are still coming back and watching. We're trying to get out a few tonight that we're going to be pumping through. This will be the first of 3 new episodes.
Yeah, we're a little behind. We've actually seen 3 movies since we filmed our last episode. And basically, I think we want to do an episode for every movie we see. At least that's the theory. So where are we at now?
Well, right now we have to introduce the drink of the night.
Drink. Okay, so I am drinking a very fine Irish lager, Harp, from the bottle.
And I'm doing a little Sam Summer Ale, nice and simple. Cheers. Cheers, everyone.
Quick shout out to friends and family of Goody and Johnny Moore at the Movies. I want to give a shout out to my buddy Pat Devaney, who is a longtime high school friend, who's also the creative genius behind Zombie Hunters, City of the Dead. In case anybody's ever seen that, it's an independent zombie series on TV, which predates The Walking Dead. So, shout out to my buddies in the industry.
Okay, so I think with that, we're going to get right into the review here. This is the
last.
Well, no, not last.
You know what? It's not last.
It's not last. New Mutants
New
will
Mutants.
technically be the last.
Unless they keep doing more New Mutants films after that.
Yes. So we still don't know the fate of that one. That just got pushed back to 2020. But this is the last of the X-Men films featuring the characters that we know.
Yeah, basically the reboot that started with X-Men First Class.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I think, is the 4th film.
Yeah, so you had First Class, then you had Days of Future Past, then you had Apocalypse,
and
now you have Dark Phoenix.
This is actually, I want to say Sony's.
No, Fox.
Fox. Sony did FF.
Mm-hmm.
This is Fox's second attempt at this storyline.
Yes.
Oddly enough, because the original X-Men trilogy ended with X-Men 3, which was what?
The Last Stand. Funny enough, however, it was the last film in that X-Men franchise, and this is going to be the last film for this one.
And that was, basically a Dark Phoenix.
And Simon Kinberg, who is the director of this film, was, I believe, a writer and or producer on that film. So, didn't get it right the first time, so we thought he would try it again, and I want to say...
I still don't know that they got it right, but they did do it different.
They did do it different.
And
I would say it was a slight improvement to that film.
Yeah, it worked on some levels. It didn't work on some other levels.
Yes.
At the end of the day, my ultimate hope is that when all the mutants get back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe where they belong, that they will actually try to do the Dark Phoenix saga again and do it right. Because I can tell you right now, if you do the Dark Phoenix storyline right, it is awesome, and it'll be different and fresh, and it'll be so much better than either of these past 2 attempts. It easily could be like an endgame scenario, like with Thanos. Like I said, we've talked about who's going to be the next big villain for Marvel.
Right.
I think it's going to be Galactus, but I could see them. If Marvel was smart, they would be lining these up so that they never run out of movies and ideas. If you're going to do Galactus next, which makes sense, I think after that, you do Dark Phoenix. And you can actually weave in that storyline slowly but surely and build up to it, whether it be...
Like another 20 movies from now.
Exactly.
They
you
can
literally
take their time.
could do that.
So
hopefully the third time, if they do go that route, will be a charm.
The one thing that I told John after we saw this film that I really enjoyed was I thought in this film we actually got to see some of the mutants where in films past their powers were kind of either they were toned down or we just didn't really see enough of them. I thought this film did a good job at showcasing some people. One of them being Storm, because I feel like in the past she has not really been showcased that well. The Halle Berry Storm.
I always thought the Halle Berry Storm wasn't that much. Wasn't that much in the shadows.
I think the first 2 films of the Bryan Singer films, I thought she was really underutilized, and her powers were almost a joke. The third one, in The Last Stand, she got to showcase a little bit more, but I still think that I forget the actress that plays her in this one, and also in Apocalypse. But I think she definitely does a much better job showcasing her abilities.
Yeah.
in
And
this.
you would have thought with like such a powerhouse, name like Halle Berry, like they would have like
Right, showcased her more.
showcased her
Yeah.
her more. And not for nothing, she in the new X-Men, she is one of the more popular and significant characters. Everybody says Wolverine, 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 but
Yeah.
there's more than just Wolverine. Storm was always one of the most popular characters.
Well, I also think too that
in the comic book universe.
there's one scene in the film where they're pretty much deciding what to do with, Jean has pretty much turned dark at this point. Oh, spoilers, by the way, for those who have not seen it yet.
For spoilers, if you've never seen this movie, or maybe you've never seen X.
Or if you haven't seen any of our videos, we always do spoilers.
Or, we did actually kind of talk a lot when we did the review of the Dark Phoenix trailer.
Mhm.
And, if maybe you've never read the comic books or seen the cartoons either.
Yeah. But, well, we were right. When we saw the trailer, we talked about it. We said right away that Mystique is going to die, and she's going to die early. And she pretty much did. Things kind of went I thought things kind of progressed very fast with Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, I was actually a little bit upset about the death of Mystique, only because I felt she was one of the strongest characters in the movie. And I wanted, like, if somebody was going to die, I was almost hoping it was somebody else.
Yeah.
Because she was, and who plays her? What's
Jennifer
her name?
Lawrence.
Jennifer Lawrence's characterization of Mystique is really, really good. It's
That was one of the best things about First Class. Like this whole series that's gone on since First Class, I think she has been one of the standouts. Just been fantastic.
Everything she says carries like emotional weight and substance. And it's a really, it really is a good characterization. So for her to, I want to say, she wasn't out in the first 5 minutes, but she was out pretty early.
I would say by like the 20-minute mark, I think she was.
And I just found that, I found that a little unfortunate, because I think she could have easily been one of the stronger focal points of the film all the way to the end. I almost wish they kind of killed somebody else.
Yeah.
Because I think they chopped their legs out from underneath them by getting rid of Mystique.
And then we have all the characters that have come back from Apocalypse pretty much. I think his name's Ty Sheridan, who plays Cyclops.
Mm-hmm.
He's back again. And then, of course, Michael Fassbender playing Magneto.
Mm-hmm.
He was a little off for me in this film.
I think so too. I don't know if this is a criticism, but one of the things that I heard someone say a little bit negatively about the film is that, like, the X-Men characters are still wearing like the same generic costume. Nobody has an individual costume. It's like, and you're ending the series now. You kind of had a chance to give these characters a little bit more personality on your way out, and instead they went with the standard, yellow and blue, or yellow and black, however you want to call it. Like very, very reminiscent of the original X-Men, which I understand that's what they're trying to do, but it's like, you know what? This is the end for them. I think they could have graduated. I think the X-Men could have graduated to, especially, the older characters. These were older characters at this point. I think they could have given them a little bit more flair on their swan song.
The one thing I don't like, and this has been happening for pretty much throughout this whole series, is Beast can transform back and forth between Beast and Hank pretty much on command, almost willingly.
Yes.
And I don't know if that can actually happen in the comics or if that's changed. Like, I don't know if in the old comics, I don't think that happened. In like the newer comics, if they've rebooted everything, I don't know if Beast can transform
in the original comics, Beast was basically a human-looking character with simian-type features, and then at some point in the 70s, he tried to inject himself with some serum to kind of boost his capabilities, and that gave him the blue furry Beast. But I think for the most part, in the 70s, even into the 80s, he was stuck in that blue Beast form. And my recollection of the 90s is as well. But then again, when I stopped reading comic books in the 90s, that was 25, 30 years ago.
Right.
So a lot of things have been happening since then. So it very well could be But you used to watch the cartoons.
Well, I watched
I
cartoons
don't-
that was in the '90s that
I
Fox
don't.
had.
I don't think he was able to go back
No,
and forth in the cartoons.
no, he couldn't.
Not that the cartoons are canon, but you know they are. They are a source of. They are
Source
considered to be a
material.
source.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so the story just starts to. Everything kind of just like went along. Like, okay, we got to go from point A to point B,
Mm-hmm.
and it kept just going through. I almost felt like the transitions were just somewhat quick.
I found the alien race that got involved. Basically, what happens is that the Phoenix Force is this force that is in space. Happens to show up around Earth, and we find out that it had in the recent past destroyed a planet.
Right.
And that race was the Dabari, which incidentally, that is the name of the race in the comic books that the Dark Phoenix wipes out. Basically, Dark Phoenix, I don't even think Dark Phoenix doesn't wipe out the planet. Dark Phoenix takes out the sun, I think. Makes the sun go supernova, I think, and that destroys every planet in the solar system, knocks out the very peaceful Dabari. But in the movie, they decide that there are survivors of that planet.
And they're hunting. They're
And-
hunting the
yeah.
Phoenix Force down.
Yeah. Now in the comic book, it was actually Jean Grey as Dark Phoenix that destroyed it, and that was kind of like the big, that was like a big deal. Like the Jean Grey killed, a planet full of people, and there was hell to pay for that. But in this case, they did it. They basically the Phoenix Force did it prior to inhabiting Jean Grey's form. One thing I didn't quite really dig too much about the Dabari is that they basically it's like they kind of just show up on Earth, and walk into this party and start taking over people's full life forms, and they have this plan of getting the Phoenix Force back somehow, and it's like I don't feel they really explained enough about what the Phoenix Force was and how these people are actually able to do anything that they're able to do.
Right.
I mean, granted, I understand they're aliens that have powers, but it's like if they were able, ultimately what they want to do is they want to steal the Phoenix Force from Jean Grey, and I'm like, if you were powerful, if any just one of these people was powerful enough to steal the Phoenix Force from Jean Grey and control it and inhabit it, why weren't they powerful enough to defeat a whole race of them, a whole planet full of them?
Right.
Why weren't they able to to ward off the Phoenix Force? And oddly enough, I think in the comic books the Phoenix Force is, I think, benevolent, but in this case they actually make it to be almost like destructive. It wiped out this whole planet. So I don't think they really explain the Dabari too well, which was a shame because what's the girl who plays
Jessica Chastain.
Yeah, Jessica Chastain is in the previews, and you don't really know what she is.
They do a good job of hiding who this character is.
Yeah, all I'm sitting there and going like, it can't be the White Queen because they already dealt with the White Queen.
Right.
But she did look a little bit like of a White, and the White Queen was a character prominent in the Dark Phoenix saga in the comic books, but they already had kind of done that with this group already. So basically she's this woman who's trying to take control of the situation, and they want to get the Phoenix Force. I just felt they didn't explain it as well as they could have. And I think the one thing I didn't like about this movie is that if that Phoenix Force is so powerful and enough to destroy planets, with inhabiting Jean Grey and becoming Dark Phoenix, basically you're talking about her being a really incredibly powerful cosmic being. This is a being on a cosmic scale in a sense, and I just didn't get the feeling of that cosmic storyline. It seemed more like down to earth.
Oh, much more contained than it should have been.
Much more contained. And that's kind of what I'm hoping that maybe when the Marvel people get their hands on it, then they're going to put it into a cosmic scale, which is where it belongs, which is what it was in the comic books.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really intense in the comics.
Yeah.
Dark Phoenix was able to basically tear planets apart with her hands if she wanted to. She could destroy planets and stars. I mean, we're talking, she could just, she could kill everybody on the planet.
Well, this is where I find it interesting because in the film, it's at a certain point when there's certain after Dark Phoenix kills Mystique, there are certain people that want to just go after Jean and kill her, right? And it's like part of the X-Men, well, not really part of the X-Men, but like, Beast has like no problem at this point because he loved her, wants to kill Dark Phoenix. Even goes to Magneto, and it's like you're gonna help me do this.
Well, and it's really funny. It's the motivations are wrong, because they want to kill Dark Phoenix because she killed Mystique, not because she's a danger to the Earth or a danger. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They make it they make it personal.
Not to mention the fact that they've seen her power levels, and there's still no explanation to me as to what made them think that they were going to be able to take her out. There's a scene where Jean finds Magneto's basically now on his own island with mutants, basically as refugees.
But yeah,
and he basically just kind of like runs this peaceful island with
they
them.
tend to the Earth, and
it's like they kind of keep to themselves,
Yeah.
and they keep out of trouble. So Jean comes, and basically the military end up finding her, and at one point she's trying to basically down this helicopter, and Magneto actually tries to help them to escape, and you can see she's not really breaking a sweat as she's trying to bring this thing down, and Magneto, with almost like all of his might, is trying to hold the helicopter to help to get all the people on it, and then let them go and let them escape. And he is one of the most powerful mutants that's in this series, and he had this much trouble. So I still don't know what made anybody think that they were going to be able to take her out, even by ganging up on her. It just didn't seem like that was a possibility with all of her abilities and how strong she was. And at this point, I think they knew how strong she was, and they still thought, okay, let's go after her and try and kill her.
Yeah, I don't know if they really knew how strong she was, or basically, or if it was enough of a.
Well, the scene in the streets, what they saw, what she was able to do. So when all the X-Men confronted her, when Mystique died, and how strong she was, and what she was able to do at that point, and then her showdown with Magneto, I'm like.
But if they want to go after her, they're still going to go after her. Like, they're not going to say, "Wow, she's too tough."
No, I know, but again, but your point too, though, like saying they're only going after her because she killed Mystique,
right?
Not because
they're almost out. They're almost out for revenge.
Oh, that's exactly what
or vindication to avenge her death. It was an odd choice of motivation for them to capitalize.
But this is where I actually liked Scott and Storm, because Scott and Storm in this actually step up and be the leaders and the captains of this X-Men team that you kind of see in the comic, where they're like, no, we need to go and save her. She's our teammate. This wasn't her. We know this. We know that it wasn't her that actually did this. Something's wrong, and that they're going to try and bring her in safely and try to figure out how to get rid of this force. And they tell Xavier, they're like, no, we're going to get her. This is what we're doing, and they tell him what they're going to do. And I thought that was great to like see them actually take charge like that, because you haven't. I mean, they're still obviously they're young in these films, and that's like the point of them. These guys like growing up and learning to take on responsibility and their duty. And I think you saw that in this, where they really the two of them stepped up in particular. And then we get to the fight scene in the park and on the streets.
Yeah, which is
it was New York, right? That was supposed to be.
I almost want to say like it was really just like a commercial for New York City bus tours.
Yeah.
Both
these two. So basically, Magneto's team arrives, and then Xavier's team arrives, and obviously they're on opposing forces here. They're on opposing ends.
Yeah, Jean Grey is like holed up in like a hotel across the street from Central Park. Basically, you just have a bunch of people on one side of the street, on the opposite side of the street that are gonna attack this hotel, but they're gonna like just wade through traffic and jump over cars to get there.
Like literally, as traffic's like still coming through, they're like going through. Like Beast just starts like hopping cars.
It's
in the middle of.
It's a very poorly choreographed scene.
Yeah.
It just makes no sense.
It really did.
I mean, it's almost like they're sitting there going like, we got to have the attack on the hotel be a little bit, crazy and chaotic.
Just with people around.
So that,
it's like they were doing it just to have people around.
I think it's just one of these things where you want to do something. there's good ideas and there's bad ideas, you know. And
Yeah.
apparently they thought this was the best idea, and it was a bad idea. There had to have been a better way to do
It was
this.
just very poorly executed like how they all just came about and how they all just started fighting.
Yeah,
It really,
no, I agree.
was. And then of course, see, but then you know, Jean's aspect about this. Jean's pissed off at Xavier because she feels that he's kind of been like hiding
her past,
her past,
which it pretty much was.
which she was, but she goes from hating him. So once she finds out, like she goes from being very scared to she traces her steps back to her home where she thought her father was dead.
Yeah.
And well, basically, Jean ended up causing an accident when she was a child that ended up killing her mother, and then the father was left alive. And the father didn't want anything to do with Jean. Says that she's a freak. You know, who can control her? And then Xavier says, I want to. It's like, I want to take her on. And basically, that's how he gets Jean to come to his school. And Xavier tells Jean that the father died in the accident.
Yeah.
And then she finds out otherwise. So she goes to go see the father and sees that the father's still kind of afraid of her.
And maybe, and rightfully so. I mean, not for nothing. I think that Xavier was probably wrong. I didn't feel like I understood why he did what he did. I felt like he should have used the truth of her past to teach her lessons and say, okay, you know, you want to avoid this. You want to be in control. You know,
Right.
you know. I really feel that like he was wrong.
No, I agree with you. I think that the way that it all went about was not the right way, and that's where, of course, this is where Xavier screws up, and he's almost like the bad guy in this for a period of time. But then that scene in the hotel when Xavier does get in there, and Jean confronts him and is almost like ready to kill him. He kind of like helps her to probe his mind, and then she sees the truth about it, where he took her in because he really cared about her and that her father didn't really want her. Like, do you remember that scene? So it's Jessica Chastain and Jessica Chastain's trying to get the Phoenix Force in her.
Yeah.
And Xavier like interrupts and stops the whole thing, and then that's when Jean invades his mind, and she gets to see his memories of how it all really went down and how he took her in, and then she got to see how much that he cared for her, and then all of a sudden her feelings change.
Right. I mean, again, like it wasn't all bad what he did, but it was just like it was this core decision that was bad, and it wound up biting him.
Oh yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
It definitely came back to haunt him. There was fallout to pay for that.
But I almost feel like there was no. She gave him zero chance to explain things. Like when she came out of that house, or her hometown house, and left her father there, and she confronted Xavier, she left zero chance for him to do any explanation whatsoever.
Well, I mean, you got to realize, I think at this point she's very much on tilt and very unstable emotionally, because the Phoenix Force in her is probably too much for her to contain, and somehow she's able to contain it. And they don't really explain how or why she's able to contain it, but she is, and it's changing her physically. It's having like an effect, on her physically, and it's also like, having effect on her mentally. And she's just, embodied with all this power. They do a much better job of explaining how she gets this power in the comic book, because in the comic book, she's basically piloting the space shuttle with everybody in it. And she's the only one, like, she's trying to keep everybody safe, and she's basically at the forefront, and she's basically absorbing all the radiation. And what happens is that the Phoenix Force is out there and senses her need and her frustration, and is basically like almost in awe of it, because it's this completely selfless act that she knows is going to mean she's going to die. She is going to absorb a lethal amount of radiation, but she is going to do this for everybody else, and she's basically giving up her life. And that's what attracts the Phoenix Force, is that incredibly selfless and noble act. And what it does is it tries to save her it's there to save her.
Right.
Whereas what happens in the movie is almost like just random chance. They don't really explain what draws the Phoenix Force.
Well, I think Jessica
to
Chastain
her.
was trying to explain all that. So like when she goes into that like monologue with her and starts to like discuss the history, like that's where she finds out about the Phoenix Force destroying the like her planet and everything. So you get to hear all that. But I think she does say that the Phoenix Force chose you. It almost sounded like it, like that's kind of like where I think she was going with that. So obviously, and they had like that. That flashback of her in the space shuttle, when
Yeah.
she's holding the space shuttle together.
Yeah,
I did think that was similar
Yeah.
to the comic.
Yeah, I just don't think it made much sense why it chose her. Like,
Right.
and I mean, she was just there on a rescue mission, and everybody was there doing the same thing, and nobody was really in as much, more or less harm as anybody else.
But she was trying to hold the ship together from falling apart. She was holding the shuttle. She was holding pieces of it together so that the atmosphere inside wasn't breaking apart.
Right.
So that Nightcrawler could take everybody and get them back into the other and get them back into the jet.
Yeah, I just feel they didn't create a cohesive story arc as to how and why everything.
Oh no, that I agree with. I think there's a lot of stuff that's not cohesive with this film.
Because in the comic book, what happens is basically, you know, it's there to save her, and it does, and it gives her all this power. I mean, there's a subplot where, you know, basically when the shuttle lands in Jamaica Bay, Jean Grey rises through in the air as the Phoenix. What you don't know is that, you know, her body's in suspended animation at the bottom of Jamaica Bay, healing from the radiation. But the beam that arises is basically a construct, that a human construct that thinks it's Jean Grey, thinks it did what it did, and it has this power. Basically, it's too much power for a human to hold, or even a human construct that thinks it's human to hold. And basically, what Xavier does is kind of in order for her to handle the power levels, he puts in some psychic dampers, so that if her power kicks in too fast, it's like a circuit breaker that shuts off, and she kind of powers down. And ultimately, what happens is there's a villain called Mastermind who's screwing around with Jean Grey's psyche, not realizing she's the Phoenix. Most of the people in the Marvel Universe at that point think Jean Grey is just Jean Grey. There's an actual scene when Magneto confronts Jean Grey for the first time as Phoenix, and he doesn't know she's Phoenix at this point. And he's thinking he's like, gonna attack Jean Grey, who's really just like a telekinetic, maybe a little telepathy. And all of a sudden, the battle just goes out of control, and Magneto's like, whoa, what's going on here? And he's like, he can barely hold it together. And that was really cool. But what happens is so Mastermind screws up with Jean Grey's head, winds up breaking all the psychic dampers in her head. And what happens is the dark side of the Phoenix Force takes root, and it's uncontrollable. And she becomes, Dark Phoenix, where it's an embrace of all that power, and with and corrupt, and she almost becomes corrupt. She becomes evil, and it's on the scale that you have there. She literally, and that's what happens. She basically, as soon as the Dark Phoenix power takes hold, and she becomes evil, like she's ready to just have fun and wipe things out. And then she goes to the Dabari solar system and takes out the whole solar system, and then comes back, and they're just like, what's going on? And ultimately, there's a mental battle between her and Charles Xavier, and Xavier somehow is able to win, probably was able to reinstate some of his barriers. And then what happens is she's back to normal, but the universe is not going to let that happen. And basically enough people in the universe, especially whatever empire was in charge of that system, which I think is the Shi'ar Empire, they come back and say, you have to pay for what you did. And there's a trial. And ultimately, the X-Men are fighting for her to live, and everybody else is trying to kill her for what she is. And at the end, and it's very poetic in the sense that, the final battle is one of the greatest stories. X-Men 137 is one of the greatest comics of all time. And if Marvel can pull this off and adapt that comic, it'll be unbelievable. Because what happens is that there's a there's a battle between. It's one of these things where it's like we're gonna fit two groups against each other for the fate of Jean Grey, and it's basically the X-Men versus the Imperial Guard, and they're all fighting this and that, and the X-Men are completely outnumbered and outgunned. But at some point, they just say that somebody gets Cyclops from behind and is about to kill him, and Jean Grey sees that, and all the controls and psychic dampers that were put in place to keep her from being Dark Phoenix again, they all just melt away, and she just goes like berserk. She's ready to wipe out everybody. And at the last moment, right before the Shire Emperor is about to like basically fry the whole planet with like, a death beam and kill everybody on the planet, they Cyclops, talks to her and talks her down, and she just basically says, I'll never be in control, and she takes her own life and she dies. But then, of course, 2 years later, she comes back because that really wasn't her in the first place. Because in the Marvel universe, nobody ever dies.
That's the writing.
But yeah, but that's how they did it. And if you've never read the Dark Phoenix saga in Marvel comics, it is by far one of the best ones they ever did. Chris Claremont, John Byrne, and Terry Austin, culminating in X-Men 137.
Well, some of those things did happen in this film where she does end up sacrificing herself to save everybody.
And that's kind of what I liked about this.
Yeah. So
one of the things I liked about this movie is that it was an emotional journey.
Yeah, and I think Jean's arc throughout this whole thing is one huge emotional trip. Yeah. And even Cyclops to a degree, and Xavier, because they just they truly feel. Xavier almost feels, for the longest time, Xavier is denying that he did anything wrong, right?
Oh yeah.
He's denying for the longest time. He's like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah, and I don't know
I did everything to protect her.
Yeah, and I don't know that his character was backed in a corner to the point where he had to do what he did. I didn't seem like he was forced to do what he did. I think he chose to do what he did.
Yeah. And he thought he was making the right move.
Right.
But then after everything that happened, he, at the very end, he finally admits to Hank, he's like, I was wrong. He says, I shouldn't have done what I did. Yeah. And saw the error of his ways. But Scott was just so much, because he's just hearing that everyone's looking to kill the girl that he's in love with. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what? He's like, what are you talking about? You can't kill her. It's like, it's not her. She's not the one that's doing this.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing too. The people that want to save her because they love her, Jean.
Right. Because they love
Jean. A little bit of misdirection there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that's what makes this movie very different from X-Men.
From The Last Stand.
They really play up the, the story of Jean Grey is not what's happening to her and why. It's it's not about the details. It's about this is happening, and I'm trying to deal with it.
Right.
And I'm trying to get
the emotion of doing it. Right.
And I think one of the strongest parts about this movie by far is the soundtrack. The music in this movie is very lyrical and emotional. It pulls on strings. It's very evocative.
Yeah.
It's not like an action adventure.
Was it Zimmer?
Yeah, I
right.
think it is.
That's
it is
Hans Zimmer.
Hans
Zimmer did it. Yeah.
It's very much. It gets under your skin. It's not a battle. It's not a battle charge. It's not a.
Yeah.
It's not a.
No, Zimmer does
very
great scores.
Evocative. It gets underneath your skin, and it pulls you along emotionally, along the journey that Jean Grey is going through. The last. I think
the last segment.
The final battle.
Yep.
Is just
the build up, the music build up that he did with that. No, I think
and it's Zimmer, so subtle you don't even feel it.
I think he's always done a great job between the Chris Nolan trilogy that he did. I thought his music was fantastic, and then I'm sorry, I still love the Man of Steel soundtrack. I thought Hans Zimmer did a fantastic job. That's a tough to follow John Williams in creating a sound that's going to be unique, and I thought he did a great job.
Well, that's the thing I think with Hans Zimmer is I feel like there's no with John Williams, there's
there's like kind of Star Wars, Jaws,
there's
Superman, E.T.,
there's the recognizable theme or recognizable note. There's that hook. With Zimmer, you don't have anything that's recognizable. It's just a long, long lyrical soundtrack. It just takes you along where you need to go. There are no necessarily any highs or lows. It's just a steady kind of there, doing what it should be doing. And that's actually, not a bad way to score a film. Every film doesn't need to have,
A theme.
its own theme. Like a lot of those films, basically the score becomes a character. It's almost like talking to the audience. Whereas, the true essence of a score is really just to kind of,
Well, enhance.
carry a film through. It was. I actually enjoyed the music immensely, and that made sense with the type of story that they were telling, which was really kind of like the emotional journey. Like you just have these scenes where you have Jean Grey in the rain, huddled in a corner somewhere, and it's like that's to kind of get you to feel like how she's feeling.
No, that's probably. I agree with you. I think it's one aspect that they did capture well. There's a lot that they didn't capture well.
The train ride.
The train ride.
So basically, the final battle occurs on this endless miles of train track that this train is hurtling through the woods, and it's just like the train never derails. Much as
everything that's going on, all these,
everything that's going on,
beings
there's a lot of blasts and stuff going on, and shooting and bombs and mutant powers and people fighting, and man, this train just keeps on going. And not for nothing, there's got to be a guy driving this train. It's not. I don't think it's remote control. So there's got to be this one guy going.
We don't see this.
He's looking in the rearview mirror and he just sees all this stuff going on, and he's just like, man, I'm just gonna keep on going. I'm just gonna I'm keeping it together, and I'm the conductor, and I'm gonna keep this train.
Well, I kept finding it funny that Storm was frying the guys up on top, and yet every chance that we had to see the top of the train again, there were more guys.
There's so many of them.
But it was how are there that many people how are there that many of those aliens that are here that they just keep coming out of nowhere on top of the train? And the Storm keeps frying them.
Didn't they infiltrate the FBI somehow? The black guy. Wasn't he wasn't he getting in and out of scene?
I think that's how he was getting in and out. Yeah.
It was weird. It was. I thought those alien beings were a little weird. They were almost like zombies.
Well, I almost think originally they were supposed to be Skrulls. There was supposed to be talk of using Skrulls in this film.
Oh,
and
I didn't
then,
know that. Okay.
And then that obviously, and then with everything that happened with Captain Marvel, kind of took. When they found out that they were being used in that, I think they had to change a little bit. Not to mention they changed the whole ending. The whole ending of the film was actually supposed to take place in space. It was supposed to be a big space battle. I think the Empire was supposed to come to Earth, probably doing what you said, and that was okay. We're going to destroy the planet, and then Jean Grey flies up there as Dark Phoenix and basically wipes them out.
That basically is almost like a mirror image scene of Captain Marvel going through and taking out the ships.
I think when they got word of what they were doing with that, they had to reshoot the whole ending, and that's why they did the train.
And that was probably how many times did this movie go through reshoots? I heard
quite a few, and the reshoots were extensive, which is I think one of the
there's
reasons
probably
why a lot of
multiple. There's probably couple different versions of this film
Yeah.
that no one will ever see, unless maybe there's some extras on DVD.
Well, we'll find out when it comes out.
That could be interesting.
But I think I think unfortunately this movie was kind of doomed for a long time. I think a lot of people when they heard about all the reshoots and the extensive changes to the ending,
the delays in release.
And I think it's just unfortunate for
it's
unfortunate for the actors and the characters because they all do the best job that they can for the situation that they're given and for the material that they're given. I don't think the material was that great, and obviously the situation for them. At some point, I think they even knew while they were filming this that Marvel was getting the rights to all these films. So I think deep down, I think some of these actors had to have known that this was it for this franchise.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I don't even know if it made its money back.
Oh no, I think it's going to end up losing.
I think so too. I don't think it did. I don't think it did all that well at the
box
office, which is a real shame.
No, it is because it's you don't want to see those movies fail, but it's just not. It's not clicking with the audience.
I mean, we went to see it once, and I really had no desire to see it in the movies again. Although, I mean, I plan on seeing it.
We'll see when it gets released.
When it gets released.
Yeah.
I definitely want to see it again. But I'm going to wait to see it at home. I don't need to see it in the theaters again.
No, I agree with you. But I mean, overall, I think if you like the X-Men, I think you'll probably end up going to go to this film and
well,
I don't know about
you know what?
enjoy it.
I'll say this: it was better than Apocalypse.
But it was better than Apocalypse. We can tell you that.
That's
So
for
you,
sure.
If you didn't,
Because I think Apocalypse was by far the worst one.
yeah, I think
by far.
to me, Apocalypse and Last Stand are the two worst X-Men films. But this film is definitely better than those two. So if you agree with us and you didn't like those other two films and you want to see something a little bit better, go see Dark Phoenix. But that's going to be it, I think, for our movie review. Unless, John, you got anything else you want to
like
add?
I say, just hold out to see what Marvel does with the mutants.
Yeah.
That's what I'm waiting for.
The last film in the franchise is supposed to be New Mutants. Now, New Mutants was supposed to come out later this year, I believe, in August. It's getting pushed back to 2020. Now, the interesting thing is that Marvel is now investing money into this film to do reshoots.
Into which film?
New Mutants.
New Mutants.
So that I don't know if everybody who has seen this, but New Mutants had a trailer I think 2 years ago.
I don't even know that I saw it.
New Mutants had a teaser trailer, and it was almost like in a house, almost like a psychiatric ward, almost like it was almost like shaping up to be like a horror type film
Really?
that they were making, which looked really interesting.
I'm gonna have to go find that.
But if they end up doing reshoots, the biggest issue is that all these actors have aged.
Sure.
So that's going to look.
And they're supposed to be young, so
Yeah.
like 2 years.
That's a big.
For a young actor,
change.
they're gonna look very different.
So I don't know. I guess we're going to find out and see what happens with all that. But
Yep.
it's still coming out. That's still planned at this point in time.
For 2021.
2020.
2020.
Yeah, and then we'll see, like John said, we'll see what happens with the MCU and the X-Men probably in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
But guys, I think with that we're going to end this.
All right.
On to the next episode. All right, guys.
See you in a bit.
Take care.